going on, people? We are back with another episode of RCC Studies. I am John, and this is...
And Vermon.
Listen, we are in the book of Romans 12 specifically, and we're going to be looking at verses 3 through 8. Romans is a really good book, and chapter 12, I would actually say it's a really good chapter, right? But before we get into it, man, why you been in my closet, bro? What's going on, man? Like, is this...
Man, I was rocking pink way before you, bro.
Oh, my God.
Way before you. I mean, don't even front. Like, it's...
There was a time when pink wasn't cool. Then there was a rapper by the name of Cameron from Harlem.
Yeah.
And then he started wearing pink. And
Yeah.
that's why I started wearing pink. So shout out to Killer Cam. But, I mean, well, this is kind of like salmon. Salmon? Or...
Salmon?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway. Yeah, you know, you're welcome. As part of my mentoring of John, it's just called that's why we say holistic discipleship. So not just spiritual.
I'm with that.
Not
Speak on it.
Helping them, with all sorts of areas of real life. I mean,
I need it.
By God's grace, soon to be maybe a parent down the road, marriage, but also like with the fineness. So I'm glad to see discipleship is holding true.
I appreciate it. I need all the help I can get. So, all right, man. Well, listen. Pastor V, you're going to be preaching this passage, verses 3 through 8 from Romans 12. Talk to us a little bit in terms of like how you're thinking through it and whatnot. There's some really good stuff here.
Yeah, this has happened to me a couple of times with these passages. I'm like, I probably could preach multiple sermons out of this, but I'm not one who's looking to preach Romans for the next decade. So looking at this, begins with verse 3, for by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. And it gets into the one body. I do think I'm thinking of a connection between these in the sense that like we have to posture ourselves first in a spirit of humility, right? The sense of, again, the grace given to me, which just flows very much from much of what Romans is emphasizing. God's grace is why we have anything or able to do anything. But yeah, now we're moving starting in chapter 12 and moving to the rest. Okay, here's sort of, a lot of people see this as sort of very practical stuff, right? And so now, given God's grace, we think of ourselves in a certain way that then postures us to think more in relation to the rest of the body. What do we do for the sake of other people, right? And so, given us being humble in that way, we are one body with many members. So anyone who knows my ministry, I love that kind of sort of dichotomy. That's
diversity there.
Yeah, unity and diversity. That's something that's one of my things. I always like to notice and think about. So one body, but many members, and the members have different gifts, right? For though we are many, with one body, individually members of one another. All this is just again emphasizing the sense of connection, the sense of unity, but unity then expressed in different ways for the sake of the unity. All that then manifests itself in this way. We have having different gifts that differ according to the grace given towards us. So, again, the emphasis on grace, right? So that's a thing that flows through this, God's grace towards us. And then it gets into the different gifts. And so, amazing thing to think about is that each person within the church, if you're part of a local church, you've been given specific gifts for the sake of the unity of the body, for the service of others. I don't think the list that's here, so this is starting, right here and then continuing through the rest of the passage. I don't think it's exhaustive, but certainly it's a good starting point. Let me stop there. What are some things you want to mention?
No, that's good. Grace is a big thing that you obviously hinted around and talked about. But, I would love to hear more about think of himself more highly than he ought to think. Among you not to. Because right now I feel like in our culture, I think you mentioned something like this today in your sermon. Sit down and be humble, right? Another rapper who said that. Shout out to K-Dot. But yeah, just the idea of the humility versus the arrogance. And right now, I think in our culture, that's a really big thing for us to kind of think through of like, what does the Christian community look like? If we're going to represent God's character in the world, we got to be marked by humility.
Yeah.
And that's in the church. That's in politics for Christians that are engaging in that space. That's in the arts and creative world. Like the humility is a big thing. So I want you to kind of tease that out more maybe in the sermon, because I think that's something that,
well, honestly, that's why I'm sitting here thinking like verse 3 is a sermon in and of itself. But
Right.
But yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So that you also mentioned a unity within diversity, and which is your thing and whatnot. But there's part 2 where it talks about where one body and many members, and the gifts differ. Some people think that if you're a pastor, then like I got to be a pastor, right? And then some people think that whatever so and so is maybe doing, I have to do that. I love to expand that a little bit more and say, man, your skills, your giftings, your talents, whatever the Lord has implanted into you, everyone's different to some degree. So what does it look like for those people to maybe not feel like, man, I have character, I have this, I have that, but yeah, I don't like public speaking. So I don't want to be a pastor. I don't want to be a preacher. Or I love to hear more of like, what are the aspects of other things that people can do so they can feel valued and feel like they're contributing to the kingdom?
Well, the passage, I think, makes that very clear. Notice it doesn't say, if you have the gift of preaching or leading from up front, and that's it. Like it lists all these different gifts, and they're all equal, right? So some of these you might think like, oh, they're not as amazing as like some of the other, like for example, prophecy. Well, but that's a huge gift, right? As compared to the one who does acts of mercy, right, with cheerfulness. Which might be much more of a behind the scenes thing. Like, hey, I'm really good at like sitting with people who are down and out and hearing their story and then helping them get food and other things, right? That's not as flashy as like prophecy or the one who leads. Some people, the one who contributes in generosity, they're just really faithful to give money or to give a lot of their time. Notice these are all listed, and the implication, the thing saying is that basically we need all of them. Each of them have gifts that differ according to the grace given towards us. Let us then use them. The body needs all of those gifts, and so it's important to say that one's not more important than the other. They're all needed, and they're all needed because whether one is more flashy than others, like my hand is more noticeable, right, than like, let's say, the back of my neck, right? The parts of my body are used in different ways, but they're all function for one purpose, to get my body going. Yeah. So that's the whole point, not to see which one stands out more, but all of them are needed, because if they're not working together, then we can't be the one body in Christ that we're meant to be. I think that's the whole point.
That's good. You could preach like 5 sermons just from these passages. I don't know. We might have to.
I might need to relook at the sermon schedule.
There's a lot here.
Let's talk.
Yeah, we gotta talk about this because, there's a whole bunch here. So, anything else, man?
No, this is good.
It's good. You got a little bit of something to work with. So far.
Let's do it.
I want to ask you this. I already know the answer to it, but I just want to like kind of embarrass you in front of our audience. What's the sermon title of this?
The sermon title is Romans chapter 12, verses 3 to 8.
Word up. Well, listen, y'all. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode of RCC Studies. We want to hear from you in the comments. So we want to hear Romans 12, 3 through 8. What are some insights that you actually have from this passage? You maybe have giftings, talents, you got eyeballs, and maybe some stuff that me and Ramon were actually missing. So we'd like to hear from you in the comment section. Give us your insights regarding this as we try our best to be able to preach this in the weeks to come in our sermon series through the book of Romans, which, as you already know, there's a lot here, and we can preach many, many different sermons from this. Was there ever a pastor that probably preached like a book of the Bible and they just stayed in there for like 10 years?
Yeah, there's plenty. Like Vermon and John was known for doing this. If you look at there's people who you will kind of look at the ministry. It almost seems like they only preached like a couple books of the Bible, because they literally went through books like Romans and like a phrase at a time. So
that's funny. Well, we're not gonna do that here. So, but with that said, man, love God, love people. We are out.